put your left arm in.
Morning.
Reece was a new job.
Lovely day.
It has come to the end of the line in that sense. Mr. Hunt, you know what job you've got?
Oh, the okie dokie. Oh, the okie dokie. Oh, the okie dokie. Knees bent on.
Bit of a shambles, Prime Minister. The reshuffle.
What's the message behind the reshuffle? Looking very happy, sir.
What are your plans?
Sources expect Cooper work and pensions.
Yeah, we haven't got help.
Good to be back, Mr. Mandelson.
Oh, the okie dokie. Oh, the okie dokie.
Third time lucky.
It's a lovely day for a walk along Whitehall.
It's the biggest privilege of my life. I'm incredibly honoured and very much looking forward to getting on with the job.
Oh, really, you poor old thing. Well, I tell you, I don't think the reshuffle
You do the okie dokie and you turn around. That's what it's all about.
And the former Labour MP Chris Mullin is with us now. So, Chris, in a sentence, what is the point of reshuffles?
Well, there's too many of them. I was the 6th African minister. There were 9 in 13 years. There were 13 Europe ministers in 13 years, counting Jeff Hoon, who came round twice, once for 3 months. There were 8 work and pensions secretaries in 10 years. That's quite a complex subject to get your head around. There were health and education were turned inside out on an annual or biannual basis. It's not good for government.
No. I mean, in terms of policy, if you're looking for consistency and stability, the figures you've just reeled off there, you get neither.
You don't. And it's deeply destabilising to good government, and it's demoralising for many of those concerned. The present government, I think, has been more sensible. I've only met the Prime Minister once since I left Parliament, about 6 months after the election. I said to him, between you and I, there's only one piece of advice, with all due respect, there's one piece of advice I would offer you, and that don't have annual reshuffles. And I think he'd already grasped that point without any help from me, and he hasn't. He waited 2 years before having his first reshuffle, though someone in a position to know said to me yesterday they thought he had another one coming up in a few months' time.
But that, I mean, let's welcome viewers, by the way, from Scotland who've just joined the Daily Politics. Welcome to the programme, talking to our guests about the point of reshuffles. But when reshuffles happen, it isn't, I suggest, because there is a change of policy. It is usually because it's forced upon Prime Ministers politically. Either somebody has done something, you have to get rid of them, and that forces a reshuffle. Do you agree that actually it's something that is forced upon a leader rather than something that they genuinely want to do?
I don't really know. Sometimes it is. Of course, you get an individual Secretary of State gets himself into trouble, like Liam Fox did, for example, and then a mini reshuffle has to be held. It happened on Labour's watch too. But you don't have to throw all the pieces into the air and see where they land. And unfortunately, in recent years, and it wasn't just the last Labour government, they've got into the habit of annual reshuffles, and there's an expectation grows up in the media which starts speculating weeks, months in advance.
Well, and how big a problem is that in terms of ministers' careers? You know, speculation starts going on in the press. There's lots of briefing about who's going to go, who's going to get jobs, and actually invariably it doesn't happen the way the press predict. How destabilising is that?
Well, it is very destabilising. If you've got presiding over a big department, or whatever your responsibilities are, you need to get to know the subject. And if you're only going to be there a year, you've just reached the point where you might be useful, when suddenly the man in Downing Street raises a little finger by that much and you're gone. Or off to another department to start all over again, very often.
Yes, and that seems ridiculous, that just as you are getting to grips with it, I mean, you know, there are subjects that are pretty difficult. Definitely. The Treasury would be one of them, getting your head around all those figures. Would you say that really people should stay for at least 2 to 3 years?
I think so. I think so, ideally. I mean, it reminds me, I was first reshuffled 11 years ago when I was particularly young. I'm not so young anymore, but I remember being sort of told to walk up Downing Street, because when you're the young ones, they want you to walk up, and I went into Tony Blair's office, and you know, he was there doing the reshuffle. By the time he'd got to the sort of junior level, it was all being done in a pretty perfunctory way. And he said, "Oh, I'd like you to go to the Cabinet Office." And I said, "Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Obviously, you know, whatever portfolio you want to give." And he said, "Actually," I said to him, "Well, you know, everybody will say that, won't they?" He said, "No. In fact, you're one of the only people today who's actually said you'll take what you're given, because people actually do go in and argue with the Prime Minister as he's trying to sort of grapple with his dozens and dozens of appointments. And that always baffled me. I mean, you know, you kind of get what you're given, I think.
Well, except that it shows that Prime Ministers either are weak when it comes to telling people or giving news that they don't want to hear, or, as you say, there are ministers that fight their corner, as was reported in the last reshuffle. You know, there were reports, speculation that Ian Duncan Smith didn't want to move and the Prime Minister wanted him to move. Is it hard for the Prime Minister of the day to tell his colleagues, you're out, or we're moving you?
Well, I think Blair got quite experienced at it over 10 years.
He was there a long
time.
time.
He had a phrase, sorry, Chris, I'm going to have to let you go. And I'm sure he said that to everybody.
I didn't get that.
I actually turned down my first offer, and he rang back and said, now come off it, Chris, it's only for a few months, and then I'll find you something more up your street in the Home Office or the Foreign Office. And I'm afraid I fell for that, and it was 18 months before I emerged
You fooled!
You fooled! Of Environment, Transport and the Regions. Oh.
Well, Steve Willis, do you think it would be better if people were experts? I mean, I think there is a worry. I mean, in other countries, in some European countries, you do have to have some expertise before you take on health or education. Do you think there should be a level of qualification, if you like, before you're given a ministerial post?
I think a painful lesson we've all learnt when governments are formed is not a meritocracy. And I think it depends on how friendly you are with your party leader and group of people around him as to whether he picks up the phone or not. And I don't think that the Prime Minister or the Deputy Prime Minister goes through everyone's CVs and say, that person's done this before they became an MP, they've spoken on that while they were in opposition, therefore they should go there. That's how a business would work, but I'm afraid governments and politics is not like that.
I have great hopes for Stephen, because with the Liberal Democrats, they've got, 50-something? And it's very notable, they're churning them all through, so that everybody gets a go before, like lemmings, they fall off the cliff. They've got 2 more years.
Is that good? That's probably good for the pensions, is it not? That's
there is a ministerial pension. There is.
I'm afraid at this point we have to reshuffle you out of the studio, Chris Mullin.
Well, it's happened to me before. But I will come back, like General MacArthur.
Exactly. But we'll call you in a few weeks' time and say,
I shall
please come
return.
back.
They're going to let me go.
Oh, it's terrible. I like the Tory minister who in the last reshuffle, he went in to resign. He went in to see the Prime Minister, and he was about to explain why he wanted to resign, and Cameron said, you're doing a great job, thanks for coming to see me, bye-bye. And he walked out.
Lord Hill.
I said to Blair when he was getting rid of me that I was the 6th, and I gave him some of those figures I gave you earlier, and he said, oh, yes, we're not very good at this, are we? And I thought, who's the we?
Who's the we? What do you mean we, Tonto? I remember that.